Let's talk about something that is often misunderstood. Genesis 3:16, where God says, and I quote, "Your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you," unquote. Now, at first glance in today's society, it can sound like God is endorsing male domination. But when we look at this through the lens of life-giving design law, God's law of love and law of freedom that is built into how life actually works, we see something much deeper. See, God here is not laying down a rule. He's describing what happens when His life-giving design, His rules, are broken. Just like gravity causes someone to fall if they jump off a roof, relational brokenness was a natural consequence of sin entering the human relationship. See, before sin, Adam and Eve were equals. They were partners. They're not competitors. God made both of them in His image and gave both dominion over His creation. There was no hierarchy before sin, but once fear and selfishness entered after sin, it distorted everything, including how men and women relate to each other. So those words, "He will rule over you," isn't a command. It is a recognition of a tragic outcome. God is saying, if I may paraphrase, this is what happens when love is replaced by control. See, the original harmony becomes a power struggle now. But here's the good news though. Jesus came to restore what sin had destroyed, particularly in relationship between men and women. You look at Ephesians chapter 5, Paul actually gives a beautiful picture of what that looks like. He says, "Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ." Not over the other, but mutual submission. And then Paul says, "Husband, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave Himself to her," unquote. Now that's not domination, is it? That is sacrifice. That's servant-hearted love. That is the life-giving design in action, created by God. So when we read Genesis 3:16, we shouldn't see a curse or a rule, but a warning of what happens when we step out of line with God's blueprint. And when we look at Jesus, we see the path back to healing, back to equality, back to the way that God had intended in the first place. God bless us all.